Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. First to Mayor Teresi, what do you say? I don't think you can say, Mayor, the Pope was doing that thing. I don't think you can. I don't think you can say that. You did, but I don't think you can. It's a pleasure to be with the mayor. He's been a good friend of mine for many, many years. He's very kind to me in the good days and the bad days. He's now of special service to the state. I have him on a special task force, what they call the Mandate Relief Task Force. It's more work for no more money, just the way we like to treat our friends. But he's doing great work, and it's a pleasure to be back in general. Last time I was here, literally right here, in Jamestown, I was in the midst of an RV tour, as you heard from the mayor, with my 3 young ladies. Nerves were a little frayed, I remember, with one of my daughters, Mariah. Those RVs get smaller the longer you're in them. You ever notice that? It's the great shrinking RV story. They just get tighter and smaller day after day. But we had a lot of fun, and it really is a pleasure to be back. And it's a pleasure to be starting my State of the State tour here in Jamestown. I wanted to make that point, and I wanted to be here. So thank you for having me. Let's give him a round of applause, Mayor Teresi. Senator Young, pleasure to be with you. I got the point that you know everyone. I got it. It was 3 minutes into it, I got it. I really got it by the end of it. It's a pleasure to be with the senator, and I think the senator's words resonate. This is a very tough time for the state, and it is a time to really put our politics aside, our political politics aside, and really come together in a way that we haven't come together before. And it's a pleasure to be with the senator who represents just that spirit. Let's give her a round of applause, Senator Catherine Young. Joe Campion, God bless you. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you for being with us today. This is called the State of the State. State of the State is an address that is done annually. We have a State of the Union that the President gives, the State of the Nation, State of the City address that a mayor would give. A governor gives the State of the State. Historically, the address is done the first or second week in January. I did it last week in Albany. And the expectation is that people will come to Albany to hear the governor's address of the State of the State. That's the tradition. I wanted to change the tradition a little bit, more as a point of we have to make a lot of changes in Albany. And one of the changes is the attitude that people are going to come to hear their government in Albany. Why doesn't the government come to the people? Why is the expectation that people are going to flock to hear the governor speak hundreds of miles away? Government is a service bureau. I work for you. I work for you. You pay me. You sign my check. My obligation is to come to you. So what I'm going to be doing is taking the State of the State address, and I'm going to be going all throughout the state to bring the message to the people, and we're starting in Jamestown. And this is an important message, and this is an important moment. And you need to know the facts, because I believe this is a critical period for the state. And this is about making sure you have the information so you are part of the process going forward. I entitled the State of the State Crossroads because I think that says it aptly. This state is at a fork, and you feel one set of factors that's pushing the state in one direction. You look at the national economic problems. You look at the cost of New York State government, which is off the charts. You look at the dysfunction of New York State government. That is a national scandal. And you look at the fact that the people have really lost trust in state government, and you hear it all over the state. They would all suggest that we take one path, which is not a favorable path. At the same time, this is a state that has great assets. It has a phenomenal legacy. It is a state that has manifested tenacity. It has the best people in the nation, in my opinion. And there is a very real possibility, I believe, that we can actually turn this crisis into an opportunity. So what is the state of the state? Number one, this is a time of crisis for the state. Number two, it's a time that we have to transform our government. And I use the word transform. Number three, we have to regain our place as the progressive capital of the nation, which is what this state was. And number four, we have a moment of opportunity if we seize it. I am sure of this. The decisions we make today will decide the future of this state. I believe it is that critical a point. And it is a point of definition. These will be defining moments for the state. In a simple word, it is time that the state of New York changes, makes changes and makes dramatic changes. First, in terms of the time of crisis. In government as in life, you can never solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge. That, to my high school friends, that little piece of wisdom will serve you very well. Denial is not a life strategy. Not in a personal situation and not in government. We have problems in New York State. We are losing jobs, 800,000 New Yorkers unemployed. Unemployment rate in Chautauqua, 8% as we sit here today. We have the worst business climate in the state, in the United States. The worst, literally. Our taxes are 66% higher than the national average. The rate of growth of the upstate economy, before the economy really slowed, up until 2006, upstate New York was growing at 1.7% when the rest of the country was growing at 2.7%. Our cost of public pensions has exploded, 476% increase. These are pensions that you guys are going to have to pay in the future. These are the costs of paying for the baby boomer pensions. When I retire, and if I was a public employee long enough, I'm entitled to a pension, and you're going to pay the pension. Those costs have gone through the roof. And the simple point in the state of New York is we just spend too much money, period. There's no nuance to it. There's no easy way to say it. We spend too much money. We spent, from 94 to 2009, while inflation was going up at 2.7%, we were spending about double that in Medicaid, 6% per year in education when inflation was 2.7%. You spend too much money. You were spending more money than people were making. Income was going up at 3.8% a year. We were spending close to 6% a year. You spend too much money. And when you spend more than you make, you have a problem. You have a problem in your household, you have a problem in your business, and you have a problem in the state of New York. Our expenses, our spending rate is far higher than our revenue rate. So this year, we have a $10 billion deficit. What's worse is it goes to 14 next year, and it goes to 17 the year after. Now, you could say, well, we spend a lot of money, but we get a lot for it. We get a great bang for our buck. You know what's even worse? We spend a lot of money, and we get back very little. Number one in spending in education in the country. In the country. Number 34 in terms of results. Number one in spending in Medicaid in the country. Number 21 in terms of results. $1.6 billion in economic development programs. We're number 50. So it's not just spending too much. It's getting too little. And while this is all going on, the one thing that's growing is the size of government. Up to 600 executive branch agencies in the state in 1999. And it's not just state government that's growing, it's the number of local governments that are growing. Over 10,000 local governments now in the state of New York. 231 governments in the county. One county for every 578 people. Why are my property taxes so high? Because you're paying for all those levels of local government. And you have a government in Albany where the power of the special interests outweighs the power of the people. Period. The proof is in the pudding. People are voting with their feet and they are leaving. That's how you know you have problems, because people literally are moving. We need radical reform. We need a new approach. We need a new perspective. And we need it now. Second point is we have to transform our government. Right now you have a government of dysfunction, gridlock, and corruption. You have to make it a government of performance, integrity, and pride. It's a time for results, not rhetoric. It's a time for action, not talk. We've heard a lot of talk for a lot of years. We actually have to do something now, because it is the point of no return. And it's not about trimming a budget. The numbers are too bad for that. This is a transformation. It's about reinventing, reorganizing, redesigning government. Literally a transformation plan for a new New York, based on 4 principles. Number 1, you want a government that pays for performance. The government should be just like you are in your life. When you pay, you expect to get something in return. You pay for a service, you pay a plumber to come to the house, you expect the sink to work after you pay the plumber. Normally, you pay and you get results. Only the state of New York, in government, we lost that point. We need to get results in real time. We need a government that puts people first, not the special interests. And we need a government that you can be proud of. A government of integrity. A government that when you young guys look at it, you say, you know what? Maybe I want to do that with my life. Being an elected official, being a mayor, being a state senator, that's a place of honor and that's a great thing. And my government is there for me. And it's a source of inspiration. We have a long way to go to make that true. But we have to start by transforming New York's economy. That's the symbol, the state seal. If you look closely at the state seal, at the very middle of it, that's the Hudson River. And you see those 2 ships? Those 2 ships symbolize intracoastal and international commerce. At the heart of the seal, when the state was founded, it was all about commerce. It was all about enterprise. What made New York, New York? It was the private sector was growing. We have to put up a new sign in New York. New York is open for business. And we have to change our attitude and change our orientation. Now, to get the state's economy running, there is no one broad brush that we can wave from Albany, because that's not the way the economy works. The economy works regionally. Western New York is a situation unto itself. And Western New York is different than Central New York, is different than the Capital District, is different than the North Country, is different than New York City. And the economic development strategies that work are homegrown, localized, regional strategies tailored to that specific locale. Our economic development approach is going to do just that. It's going to break the state into 10 regions and work on economic development and all government matters region by region. There'll be public-private sector partnerships. It'll all be about spurring economic growth and jobs, jobs, jobs. The driver is going to be higher education. We have a great state SUNY system of higher education. That is the engine that pulls the new train of economic development. These regional councils will also be coordinating mechanisms for all the different governments. So on this council, you'll have the state government, the county government, and the local government. And you'll have all the different state agencies. Right now, we have trouble coordinating among the state agencies. One agency says this, one agency says this, one agency says this. They'll all be at the same table. The lieutenant governor of the state, Bob Duffy, former mayor of Rochester, will be the chairman of the council, and all the decisions will be made by that council, among the governments and within the government. We're going to take all the existing state economic development money, and we're going to have the decisions made by those regional council in those regions. We're also going to have a pot of $200 million where the regions can compete amongst themselves for the best economic development ideas. Next, we have to do something about property taxes. We have the highest property taxes in the nation. 13 of the 16 highest taxed counties in the country are in New York. Think about that. 13 of 16. The old days when you bought a house, the question was, can I afford the mortgage? Now the question is, can I afford the property taxes? Chautauqua, 5th in the United States of America in terms of property taxes. Literally the 5th highest in the nation. And you wonder why we're losing people. And you wonder why we're having trouble attracting business. We have to hold the line on taxes for now, and we have to hope to reduce taxes for the future. Because it is very simple, my friends. This state has no future as the tax capital of the nation, period. You're not going to keep these young people here. You're not going to attract businesses. They're mobile, they can go, they can get in planes, they can get on trains, they can pick up their laptop and go anywhere. And if it's the most expensive state to live and do business, they won't live and do business in New York. It is that simple. Some people say we have a deficit now, we should raise taxes. To me, it is very simple. That's the last thing we should do. Because the people of the state simply cannot afford to pay any more taxes, period. It's time to transform the state government, reorganize the state government, use this crisis to actually do what we should have done for a lot of years. The state government hasn't been reorganized since Al Smith in 1927. Is that amazing? In 1938, they reformed the Constitution. And the Constitution says to this day, the state can only have 20 departments, okay? But over the years, they wanted to grow government. So what did they do? Because they had a restriction that you can only have 20 departments. They created new agencies and used every word but department. Because the law said you can't have new departments. So now you have the Department of Health, one department, with 87 additional units of government. 87 attached to one department. Advisory panels, 46 counties, 6 committees, 17 boards, 6 institutes. It is unmanageable. Not only is it expensive and wasteful, it is unmanageable. And it has been like this for decades and decades. Why? Because no one wanted to take the time to actually go and try to reorganize it. You have to take each one of these agencies, the entire state government, do a comprehensive review, and eliminate the waste. I'm proposing a private sector commission to come in to do just that. Private sector management experts, business experts who will come in, reorganize the government. I then want to go to the legislature and say, here's the plan. It becomes law unless you reject it. We need to get the legislature to function. And we need to get it to function quickly. So my advice on this issue is, we do the plan, we hand it to the legislature, and then it's an up or down vote on that entire plan. We need to transform the budget process, which is now embarrassing. First, we have to start with a financial plan that stabilizes our finances. A wage freeze for government workers. We need to hold the line on taxes. We need a state spending cap that limits the amount the state is spending. And we have to close this current $10 billion gap without borrowing any more money. Not only just no new taxes, we have to close it without borrowing. And we have to transform the process itself. Right now, it is a partisan, Democrat versus Republican. It is political. It is embarrassing theater. We actually have to make it productive. It's about intelligent debate and compromise. Right now, the governor and the Assembly and the Senate are like ships passing in the night. Bring them back for a second. I think I recognize someone on that ship. Yeah, I think if you look closely on that ship, that is Senator Dean Skelos. He's the head of the Senate majority. And that is Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver, who is head of the State Assembly. And that's yours truly. You notice I have the biggest battleship on it. And that is a factual representation. And then you have the special interest groups who do an air attack and shoot at the governor who's just trying to do the right thing in all of this. That is what has been happening in Albany for too long. That has to change. We have to try it a different way. There are 3 flashpoints that really drive the controversy when it comes to the state budget. It's education, Medicaid, and what they call state and local mandates. I want to try a new approach all across the board. When it comes to Medicaid, state of Wisconsin did something interesting. The governor announced cuts to the Medicaid program, and the industry complained, which is what the industries do. What they did in Wisconsin is the governor brought the industries to the table, and it was basically an alternative dispute resolution. And he put the industries at the table and he said, I'm cutting the program, and that cut's going to happen. You can either be part of helping me make the cut, or I'm going to do it my way. But one way or the other, the cut's going to happen. The industry actually responded, came together, worked with the governor to find the best ways to make the cuts. That's what I want to do in New York. Wisconsin has had success with it. We're going to try the exact model because, again, this isn't about just cutting the budget. It's about redesigning the programs to make them work better anyway. So we'll have a Medicaid redesign team. It started on January 7th. They will come back with a redesign plan by April 1, which is the deadline for the budget. They will assume the reductions that I set for them in the governor's budget, and it will have all the stakeholders at the table, the hospital people, the union people, etc. We hired from Wisconsin the person who ran this process in Wisconsin, and he just joined our team in Albany, and he'll do it for New York. We want to do the same thing on what they call mandate relief. Mandates are state-imposed restrictions on local governments, plans that the local governments must do. State of New York mandates that the city of Jamestown provide X services in terms of education, etc. The local governments complain, rightfully so, that the state is very good at telling them what to do, but the state doesn't provide funding to do it. So we're putting together a team that actually can address mandate relief. Your mayor is on this team. It's already started. Again, it will be ready for the budget to eliminate mandates and include all the involved stakeholders and members of the legislature on both sides of the aisle. We need to transform the education process. When you think about it, it's not only an economic tragedy, it's a social tragedy that we're number 1 in spending and number 34 in terms of results, right? If there's one thing that's important, it's educating our children. We spend more than any state, and our results are poor, to say the least. Right now, the way the state funds education is by a formula. Every school district gets a certain numerical amount run by a formula. There is no performance, no competition. You get your formula amount. You get it every year. If you do a great job, you get the same amount of money. If you do a poor job, you get the same amount of money. I believe in performance. I believe in competition. I believe in rewarding and incentivizing performance. The federal government actually does this much better than New York. They run competitions, and the states all vie with each other to win the federal funds. This state government actually acted very quickly to compete for federal funds called Race to the Top funds. Legislature actually passed the bill, which was shocking, and passed it quickly. So competition works. I want to bring competition to the education funding in New York, where we have a competition for schools that are the best performers, that increase their ratings the most proportionately, and a competition for the states that do the best job at saving money from a managerial administrative point of view. I've been talking about consolidating governments. Those 10,600 local governments, consolidating local governments. It's hard. Why? Because if you have 2 towns, they both have infrastructures, they have mayors, they have boards, etc. And there's no real incentive to consolidate the two towns, especially if you're the people running the two towns, right? How do you overcome that? I want to offer bonuses for consolidation, half of which would go back to the taxpayer. So we'll incentivize the taxpayers to actually push the local elected officials to move that way. We have to transform the ethical environment in Albany, and we have to clean up Albany. You've all seen the headlines over the years. As Attorney General, I did many of these cases myself. And the corruption in Albany is deplorable and inexcusable, and it has to stop. And sometimes the issue is black and white. Sometimes there is no nuance and there is no finesse. And this is a black and white issue. The people of the state have lost trust in Albany. The state government has lost credibility. We have to pass ethics reform, and we have to pass it now. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm proposing a Clean Up Albany plan that, number one, ends what's called pay-to-play, which is vendors, contractors make a political contribution, and all of a sudden they get special access by the state government. Full disclosure of outside income for legislators, especially for the lawyers. You know why? You have a basic right to know who your legislator works for. It's that simple. Who pays your legislator? Who do they work for? Do they work for you or do they work for someone else? Right now, you don't know. I want disclosure of all outside income by the legislators, an independent monitor, independent redistricting, and public financing of campaigns. We have to do all this fiscal hard work. We also have to continue to achieve the social progress that this state is famous for. I did a lot of cases on Wall Street corruption as Attorney General. And the constant refrain was, where was the federal government? Where was the SEC? Where were the federal regulators when these banks were ripping off everyone in the mortgage pools and the housing fraud? I have another question. Where was state government when the Wall Street bankers were ripping everybody off on Wall Street? Yeah, the federal government has regulatory agencies. So does the state. We have an insurance department. We have a banking department. We have something called the Consumer Protection Department. The way they are organized, literally, a lot of the Wall Street activity fell between the cracks, among the cracks, between and among insurance, banking, and consumer protection. I want to merge the three. It will be cheaper for the taxpayer. It'll reduce government, make it a Department of Financial Regulation that actually mirrors the way Wall Street now operates, so we make sure what happened never happens again. We've been talking about creating green jobs in New York. Now we have to do it. I want to set up a $100 million competitive fund for the best private sector partnerships that actually create green jobs and compete and win up to $100 million. Minority and women-owned business enterprises is a program that works very well for the state. The goal so far has been 10% of the state contracts. I want to double that to 20%. There was, before your guys' time, guys being gender neutral, there was a facility called Willowbrook, downstate New York, which was a mental hospital, which the conditions were deplorable. And a news reporter took a camera and went into this state mental hospital and filmed the deplorable conditions and put it on TV. And there was shock and outrage among people of the state, how we were keeping people, the disgusting conditions, that spurred a whole movement called deinstitutionalization, which was getting people out of large facilities, mentally ill people, out of large facilities into smaller community-based residences. And we've been doing that since about the late 50s, early 60s. There is an echo of that today. We have juvenile justice facilities located predominantly in upstate New York, where we send young juveniles, predominantly from New York City, to juvenile justice facilities, which are akin to prisons, remediation programs for young people. They are phenomenally expensive, over $200,000 to keep a young person in a juvenile justice facility. $200,000. And they have a very poor record at helping the juvenile actually do better. If anything, there's evidence that they get into more trouble. Over a 90% recidivism rate. So you're spending $200,000 to put a juvenile in a place that is actually hurting them and changing the trajectory of their lives, 90% recidivism rate. Why? Because we don't want to close the state facilities. State employment is not a justification to keep a young person imprisoned in a facility that they shouldn't have been in the first place. Especially this has to change, and it has to change now. I support marriage equality for all New Yorkers, and I'm going to propose it this year, and I'm going to work very hard to make it a reality. I want to start a program of urban green markets that actually reaches out to New York's agricultural community and offers them urban markets all across the state that the state will facilitate and the state will sponsor. We're trying to get good food, green food, produce into urban markets, and we're trying to help New York's agricultural community. We'll put the two together, and the state will sponsor it, and we're in the midst of that. I believe if we do this, there's actually a moment of opportunity to seize, because New York is not alone in what we're going through. As a matter of fact, there are 8 states that have a worse fiscal condition than the state of New York has right now. And this is a national transition. And this nation has had transitions before, the agricultural transition, the industrial transition, high-tech transitions. This is a moment where New York can actually lead the way. And a lot of these problems we've been looking at these problems for many, many years, my friends. That growth of government didn't happen overnight. The corruption of government didn't happen overnight. The state mandates didn't happen overnight. None of this happened overnight. The loss of trust, the loss of credibility, none of it happened overnight. That rate of spending has been increasing for 20 years. We just couldn't change it. Why? We didn't have the political will. We didn't have the energy. Change is hard. It is hard to change. Change is a fascinating concept. Everybody believes we need change. I support change. We need a lot of changes. You know what they really mean? They mean you need to change. That's what they mean. They are doing pretty well, and they actually want to keep things the way things are. You have a lot of changes that you can make. Change is hard, and it's been hard for the state. I'm hoping that we take this crisis and the energy in this crisis, and we actually use the energy in this crisis to make the changes we should have been making for 20 years. The state that does that, my friends, is the state that wins. And you know why I'm going all through the state with this message? Because you know who's going to change Albany? Not the senator, not the assemblyman, and not the governor. You are going to change Albany. It changes when you make it change. It changes when the person in the mirror makes it change. Democracy works when you make it work. You know why it hasn't changed for 20 years? Because you haven't insisted on it. Well, I've been angry, I've been upset, I was disgusted. I know you were, but you didn't take action. And that's the difference. And it didn't change because you let them get away with it. Politicians have very good hearing, or they're not politicians for long. I hear what the people want. Kathy hears. Sam hears. When you say you demand this, you're going to get it. What we need to do now, I know you've been disenfranchised from state government. I know you've been alienated. I know you've been disappointed. People say to me all day long, I don't even like to think about it. I don't even like to read the articles in the paper. I'm ashamed. That's not going to change it. That's not going to change it. You have to get involved. You have to get active. You have to demand change. Get involved. We're setting up a website so that you can make your voice heard. We need the legislature to hear this message. We need the Senate to hear it. We need the Assembly people to hear it. We need the executive to hear it. We need you to get engaged. If the people of the state do this, and if we actually do what we've always been brilliant at doing, which is when there's a crisis, we step up and we step into it. And we take the energy of the crisis and we redirect it into a positive force. You're going to make this state better than it's ever been before. And we'll remember this period when we're talking to our kids, and we'll say it was the period that the Empire State actually strikes back and becomes the Empire State once again. Thank you for having me, and God bless you. Thank you.